Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Finance and Performance meeting. Let's get cracking. Who is going to open with Karakia today? I might. Okay, let's pray. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together here today. Thank you for the beautiful sunshine and a little bit of rain. Please guide us in the last few weeks as we work our way towards Christmas. Please bless the work we do today. Help us to do it in a way that will make our community proud. Amen. Okay, apologies. I've got an apology for lateness for Councillor Huriwai and Councillor Tibble. Nothing else? Okay, I move that. Seconder, Councillor Ria. All in favour? Aye. On three, carried. Declarations of interest. I'm a Trust Day Rafferty trustee, so I'll just note that. Action Register and Governance Plan. That's page 4, councillors. That's just for noting. You will see that our Action Register, there's a date of the 2nd of February. So that will be our first meetings where that will be addressed. No leave of absence. Any acknowledgements or tributes that we might have missed yesterday or that you're aware of now? If not, we do not have public input or petitions for today. Also, no extraordinary business, notices of motion, or adjourned business. So I'm going to take us straight to page 6. You know what I was wondering? Why are there no minutes? When I read where's our minutes? Let me check. Thank you. Okay. So today you will see for the new councillors, this is a standard, these 3 agenda items are always on here. It's really standard. Over time you will learn how to read them more easily because they always look the same. So let's start, Pauline, page 6. We are the rates and Sundry Invoice debt management up to September 2025. Thank you, Pauline.
Yes, as our Mayor has stated, these are standard. This is the first one is what we talk about in terms of the biggest looking after management is our rates, obviously the debt per se, and then we'll call Sundry Invoice, which is everything else but rates. In terms of this, it also gives you it gives you an update of what we're doing in this area. In terms of the workshops that we have and road shows that we go and support, a little bit of information of the rates rebate, which is the central government scheme in terms of what, if you're eligible, you can get a remission of your rates, etc. And a little bit of background information of our previous ones that we've given before. So it's trying to bring that in there as an overall update. We, just for your reference, we talk about our rates, which is obviously our biggest amount in terms of absolute dollars, and also about collectability. And collectability is usually a percentage of the total rates that we have as revenue. And we collect more rates revenue each year. And so therefore, if you've got an absolute dollar figure, you're not actually responding to how much do we collect of total revenue, because that goes up. And so that's why we say this is a percentage of that total revenue. How is that going? Is it actually it's around about 6%, but is that actually going, meaning the collectability is 7 or 8%, meaning that's a worse situation? The more that you get that down, the better the results you have. I'm happy to take any questions, and also the same as Fiona, because there may be other parts being the first time as more general questions as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay. Councillor Gregory.
I just had a question as to why the debt for parking fines and dog infringements is dealt with like in another, not in here, and where do we see it?
Separate legislation, through the chair. Separate legislation. So the infringements goes through the Ministry of Transport or Karakia legislation, and the dog registrations have its own legislation as well. So they're separate to how we collect sundry debt and rates debt.
So do we see them somewhere in another committee, those that debt, or not?
I don't know.
I'll see if that does get reported. We probably at the activity level you get to report on that, but specifically as to them, because the amounts are smaller, obviously the dog registration. But it can be a reference. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Alder.
It's more of a comment really that looking at the general rate, debt outstanding has doubled in 2 years. Is this a trend that is happening only in our region, or do you know this is a New Zealand-wide trend?
We probably have to come back to see what is our proportion to others. Definitely ours, probably you can say that has been affected from two elements. I would say it's a nationwide trend is with the COVID that comes through, then there's some other that's tightening, but we also can see that there was some tightening a little bit in Gabrielle. And so there may be a concern, but we can come back to say, okay, what's the kind of the differences compared to others? And we are doing a bit of that analysis as well.
My next question on page 11, points 32 and 33, with an ageing population, it's about rebates for supercard holders, and with an ageing population, have we got a little projection on where this figure might end up over the next 10 to 15 years? If we're up to 1 million at the moment, is there any trends showing up?
So we will, well, okay.
Well, I can answer part of that, is that when we've asked DIA that, who are providing the rate rebate, they said at this stage it's a bit of an unknown and that they would provide statistics after the first year that the changes are in regarding the Super Gold Card. They have noticed that it is having an impact, that there are more rebates throughout the country and there are more people getting a higher rebate. But at this stage, I think they have to go, from what they've said, is they have to go through one cycle to see what the impact is. And then the other thing is that in March, there's a rates conference that I'm on the executive committee for throughout New Zealand, and we have asked Internal Affairs to come on and give us an update about how the rate rebate scheme is working and what the differences and changes are. So I will be able to report that at a later date.
And supplementary comment for, we get reimbursed that money from the government.
So the rate rebate scheme works that we have the application forms here, we help people with that application. As soon as they are granted a rebate, it goes straight to their rate account, and that is 99% the same day. And then we go through a process of claiming that back every month. Yes.
Thank you.
So it is not a cost to council. The only cost is our time and processing.
Councillor Foster.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking on page 7, and the reason why the rates debt is higher this time is because of delays in postal delivery that affected delivery of Stormont 1 to rate invoice for rate notices. When are we going to email rates? Is that ever going to be happening rather than relying on an antiquated postal system?
I can. So at this stage, we probably have about 55% of our rates information database receiving their rates by email, and we do promotions like that regularly throughout the year, and we get more sign-ups all the time. As far as the mailing of invoices, there's always been a group of people people that prefer to get the paper copy, and this time what we found is the mail contractor had a lot of sickness over that winter period, and they had a lot of staff away, and they couldn't deliver within the time frame they had in the contract. They did bring other people out of town to help with that. But yes, we do email currently, but we are looking to improve the level of emailing in the next couple of years. Part of that looks like it would be involved in the transition to Tech 1. When we move our current system that we've got, we can't email directly from that, so we have to use a contractor to email. But
also the rubbish stickers comes, so we need to send something in the mail because the rubbish stickers need to go. Not that I'm saying it's not good to email it, because then it can be on time because it will go immediately, but we still do need to get the rubbish stickers to ratepayers as well.
Those ratepayers that have elected to get emailed invoices, we do send their the refuse stickers separately, so they can still do emailing, and then we would send the refuse stickers to them, or even to their tenants.
Is there instances where you do both? Do you send by mail and email, just as a double up?
No. So they either electing to get a paper copy or an electronic copy. But that is something that we're looking to improve when we move to Tech 1. But we are also investigating other options that we could use before then, because it might mean that we change mail provider. The company that does our printing of invoices they've just got some new software which would allow us to do this easier, and we are working on that. But I mean, we're just going through that process, so it will change and it will improve. But we do email at least 35-40% already.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Phil.
Any other? Councillor Muir.
It's page 18, the aged sundry debt. There seems to be quite a bit overdue, 90 days, but also it says it's giving a variance to a year ago, but it's just a signal of whether that's up or down. It would be quite useful if it actually gave the total debt in September 2024 as well, so we could actually compare.
Yes, we can give those other things. Most of those ones are grants, and the times of the grants that we actually have, we recognise it as an invoice as early, and then it's the processing for the external ones. But we can, certainly we can give you and some for the comparatives.
Following on from that question, I made a little mark. What is the overdue? The Regional Leadership and Support Services one.
I will have to come back exactly what that is, but I think it's a grant with it, but I'll come back. Maybe that we recognise it at first off, and then they may accrue it, but I'll come back with those.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Just wait a second. Any other questions or queries, people that have not had a go? Anyone on screen? No. Finish it up for us, Councillor Alder.
Just the maps from page 31 up to page 31 I find very interesting. Are they available for up by Manatuki Murawai?
These are specifically what our rural town maps.
Yes.
So Manatuki isn't identified as a rural town as such for the purposes of rating. They follow it's because they're in DRA2, and these are outside of that. So we're the ones that are closer into town. They don't have a separate rural township. But there may be information available in the district plan for that, because these rural townships relate to council's district plan.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no more questions, so you'll come back to us with some of these questions asked. Moved by Councillor Gregory, seconded by Councillor Thompson. If there's nothing else, all in favour? 1-3 carried. Thank you. Thank you, Fiona. Okay, we go to page 32.
So this is probably one of the most technical ones that you are going to get from finance that you actually see. It does go in the same format each time that we do report on it. But essentially, under the Local Government Act, in sections sort of 100 to 111, there's a suite of financial management. And specifically in section 101, there's a financial management, how to required to manage finances prudently. And so while we have our debt, we also need to manage any of the risk associated with having that debt. And so as part of that, we have a Treasury management policy, which is also reviewed and actually recommended by external PwC as best practice associated with it. And within that, there's a suite of within policy and without. And so for argument's sake, is that all debt should not be coming due in 1 year or 2 years, 3 years, it's spread. Similarly, to have the exposure of interest, just like you would with your perhaps insurance at home, you take out an insurance policy, which we call swaps, is to mitigate the increases of what we've got our interest for a particular period, that the floating rate goes above more than what we anticipate. And so there's a kind of an insurance policy to say, hey, if this goes over, we're purchasing for 4 to 5%, but if it goes above 6, 7%, that swap takes it back and says, hey, you're only going to pay a maximum of it. So all of this is within those designated policies, and that is what we refer to. And if you're doing it, probably the catchwords are we in policy, are we not? It looks at also our exposure to other banks, how much is the maximum that we would have with that. And then the third part, just to be aware of, our external debt, our long-term, which we consider long-term as opposed to short financing overdraft facilities, is with the local government funding agency. That is, and you've had a paper, the previous one, to say what is our relationship and what are we actually doing with those. So this is what it is. You'll see it in that same format. The main parts of it says where we are in terms of our debt. Yes, we're within what we expected to be within this year based on our requirements to meet for our capital program. I'm happy to take any questions with this because it is, as I say, very technical.
So Pauline, just for new councillors, the work and the parameters, and that is discussed monthly with PwC as well. It's not like Pauline and her team just decide where things go. You do get specialist advice as well to make sure we are safe, and that expectation of what might be coming our way, they can give a heads up as well.
Exactly, and so basically it's a monthly sit down, say what is your forecast, what do you need to do. Actually, it's probably for a strategy, the interest rates are going up and down, you've got repayment of debt coming up within another 12 months, you actually better to lock it in, do it now. So that occurs on a monthly basis. What is it? What are you reviewing? And how do you actually manage these? But the policy per se is where we are at that particular point in time, but the actual management, as you say, there's a one-to-one relationship with PwC coming.
Okay, the floor is open for questions. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, this is just a question more of understanding for me. You've got net debt of 209 mil, you've got gross external debt 213 mil, and then you've got total debt at 214.7 mil. I can see the gross external debt is the total debt less the bank facility, so I'm guessing that's like a revolving credit facility we're not using. And then that net debt is at 214 less the 5.6 borrower notes. Can you, I had a little Google, are you able to just explain those borrower notes? It says it's,
Sure.
is that money we haven't used, or?
So, I'm just trying to find the actual wording on that page, but the borrowing notes.
Page 32 to 34.
Yeah. Just there is an extra explanation. The borrow notes, every time we borrow from LGFA, so if we've got 10 million, there's a certain amount of that we have to put, which is called borrow notes, which means, so if we've got 10 million, we might only get 9.5 million in terms of cash flow to us. The other amounts is called borrow notes. So basically it's like an asset on our books. It's a requirement in order to be able to borrow down. It mitigates the risk actually have come through. So it's like an asset. It's something that they owe us for that amount. So therefore, we didn't receive it as cash, but it's an amount that's recognised as the total $10 million debt. It's a bit of in terms of that, I'm just going to say...
Like a revolving credit?
No, it's like an asset. It's sitting in our balance sheet as an asset. So a bit like you've got shares or anything. It's an asset investment that somebody owes you that amount. So that's why when we say net debt, and the easiest way is to say you've got money in the bank as a deposit, and then you've got your external debt. You would take your cash off your external debt as saying that's your net. And so we're offsetting that because it's actually money in the bank for us, if you like, in terms of accounting perspective.
So generally, which one of those three figures do we commonly use as our debt?
So
Use the total.
most of the time, for us, our way that we manage our debt is we don't usually have investments, right? So we say we manage what we're required to borrow from what cash, less the cash that we've got available. So we don't invest. And so we usually refer that the external debt actually meets the net debt. They're usually one and the same. But in this case, you basically, your external debt should equal your net, but in some cases, for argument's sake, where we had from Muri debris, the money was given up front, and so we had some deposits within our bank account, so we referred to the net debt. So they should be interchangeable, should be no different. So we refer as our metric in terms of percentage of what we can borrow as net debt. Yeah, but for you to understand is how much have we got outstanding with LGFA, you'd say, okay, what is the gross debt? Yeah, but yeah, there are interchangeable, unfortunately.
So that net debt's the one we use for our calculations on.
Yes, it is.
Councillor Foster.
Okay, thank you. On page 32, just a query. Currently the council has 58% of its debt facilities maturing in 3 years, when our policy is 15 to 60%. Now, that's the closest I've ever seen it, actually, to the 60%. Is that a concern? I've never seen it that close before.
Oh no, it has pretty much, they have been between 40 to 50% associated with it, but we will be reviewing each part of that, and we make sure that gets over that 50%, we start to actually say, we have it the longer terms. The difficulties that we have had, now we're getting more stable in terms of what is that longer term, but the difficulties that we've had is the Three Waters reform, and the Three Waters reform was how are we managing our long-term debt when if it was going to be repaid to us if it was settled into a new entity. Now we've got the local waters done well, and we say that's going to be an internal business unit, but will be reviewed within the years 1 to 3 within our next long-term plan. We still have to be mindful of that, so we can't go too far out. So we're going to be closer to that 60% than what we have in the past, but it's still around that 40 to 50% as being optimal, because we're negotiating what is a long-term, what are our requirements. Yeah.
Okay, yep. Okay, on page 40, on the graph, liquidity over existing external debt, it's got 110%, which I was imagining that's where we were, and now it's 116%. Current position is 116%. Could you just explain that?
This is two different ones, and this is, we don't refer to it in our external reports like the financial strategy. What we refer to is the top line, which says net debt is a percentage of income that is less than 175%. And our position is 150%. That's what we refer to. Liquidity is how much money we've got available to do what we actually have to have. And so when you look at that, you actually say, page, probably even above it, table 7 on page 40, it says we've got 25 million that we can borrow with ANZ, 25 million that we've got from Westpac, and currently we've got 6 point. That's our liquidity. When we look at all of the money that we need to go out, it takes into all of the accounts. And so being 116% is a good thing.
Right, okay. Yep, okay, cool.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question's also around table 4 and the high amount of short-term borrowings. Is that 0 to 3 year, which is getting close to being maxed out in a sense, is that like sort of a long-term overdraft, or can you take a chunk of that money when we come to roll it over? Can we take a chunk of that money and borrow long?
Yes.
We can borrow long with that money.
You can. Tend to what has happened in the past, we go 5-year chunks. So some of these, they're due for review within that. That's the kind of the amounts. We haven't gone beyond that 5 years because mainly the tranches that comes with LGFA go for 5-year blocks, easier to get funding for and better kind of the rates. And also the risk mitigation that we were looking at is, and the majority of our debt is with the wastewater treatment plant and our free waters. And so if anything was to change within that process where we have the local waters done well, we didn't want to go long. We needed to be able to manage it and within those 5 years. But there now is an opportunity to look at some of these as a longer one, and if there are 10-year branches or something.
And so that figure will start to fall over the next 3 years as we...
Yeah, you still, but as you move into the years, you're going to still see about you're still going to see a rock, within that percentage is probably 30 to 40% depending on what it is, yeah.
That's all I've got in that section, but are we moving?
We're doing the whole paper. Do you want me to go to Rob first and then come back to you later? Rob, Councillor Telfer.
Yes, Pauline, on this debt, once we move the water entity into its own ring fence model, that debt will move to that entity. So it won't be reported as the same as what we got here, it'll be reported as a separate entity. Is that correct?
Freeman, no. When we're ring fenced, it's basically just meaning we have to account for it separately, but it has to be still within the overall ambit of council itself. If we were to, if it was to go into a CCO, then you're completely right, it would be separated.
But you will get visibility on it, that's the question. That.
So there will be, the percentage of the debt will be accounted to the
because as far as I understand it, we're going to have to show transparency in terms of how we're managing or what income received and how water services activity. So through that, Pauline, we would be able to identify specifically what of that debt is proportionate to that activity.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah. The overall swaps and things like that still managed at a higher level, but we have to account for each the debt for each of those activities, and that's why it's ring fenced. You actually see it as well. Yeah.
Any more questions? If not, Colin. Councillor Alder, did you find your second
Yes, I
question?
did. So it's, probably page 47.
47.
It also references back to one comment on the property revaluation on
47.
45. There's mention of a property gain.
So that's the next.
Next paper.
Sorry?
It's the next
On
paper.
47.
You've moved on to
Oh,
the
I
next
jumped the
report.
report, sorry.
Okay.
That's fine.
Any more questions on our report that ends,
Page 41.
yeah, that ends at page 41. Any more questions on that?
Move it.
Happy to move. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Seconded by Councillor Telfer. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you. Okay, councillors, we move to the last report on our public paper, which is on page 42, and that is our financial report. Thank you for the thorough notes. I always enjoy those. Do you want to talk to it?
I'll just do as, because it's a kind of the first one, and maybe some of the format where new councillors may not have seen it. So bear with me, for all the councillors have been this for a fair time before. Essentially, for councils, we usually refer to the net surplus or net deficit, and I'm just going to take you to page 45, where this is kind of the reference of the table that you are going to be looking at. That's your statement of comprehensive revenue and expenses, and so pretty much from about the fourth line up from the bottom, it says a net surplus deficit. There's another line that says total comprehensive revenue and expenses, but that line is infected by either gains and losses from revaluation. So we turn to actually refer to as the summary in the first part of this report. What is the net surplus deficit? Because what's hitting the bottom line? And two things that have an impact on that bottom line, which is perhaps a little bit different than in other reports that you see from other companies, etc. Being the public entity, we have to account for the second line from the top, which is the grants and donations from capital. And so a lot of that is either recovery money that we get for the roading, or the roading per se that we're actually doing on the network that we get money from. So we record that as revenue, but in this particular, we don't report the expenditure, the capital expenditure within this. It goes to the balance sheet. So automatically you've got more revenue than you have expenses, so you're going to have a surplus. That surplus, if you like, goes towards not having to borrow as much money. All right, so a lot of people would say, wait a minute, you've got a surplus and the other things, why are you collecting as much rates? Effectively, it is because of that line. We record that capital grant revenue, but there's no expenditure, so that creates kind of the surplus. So again, looking at this, you will see the net surplus. We refer to the first line, September. So September year to date is the first leftmost column with the numbers, and that says, okay, for the period to date, for September, the first 3 months, we're sitting at a nearly 13.3 rounded up million of more revenue than expenses. That's a surplus. And we expected to be at the same time 13.2. So we're kind of expected where we thought we were going to be. So that's kind of very, very high high level, or what, when you're going to look at it, what are we looking at the bottom line? And if you were looking at any of those numbers, they give you notes on the other side to what makes them up. Effectively, what we're saying, we're on par, but there is a little bit more, little less revenue than expenses, and that's because there's a gain and loss on those swaps that we were talking about. We have to record an accounting perspective that if there's a loss recorded on that particular things, it's then recognised in these set of accounts as a kind of loss. It may or may not be realised in the future, but it is just recorded there. It is no money paid out, there's no cash paid out, but is a recognising within the set of accounts at this particular point in time. And then expenditure of operation is a little bit less than expected, mainly because of the timing, and maybe occur in the latter part of the year. That's probably as much as I'm going to say in terms of this, but I'm happy to take any questions that you may have overall.
Okay, Councillor Telfer.
Yeah, Pauline, you mentioned just right then again the loss or whatever on swaps or gain is recorded, and we quite often hear this that this may or may not be really realised in the future. When is it likely to be realised? Is there timelines on these swaps? You take them for a period?
Yes, they're 5 years, and so therefore, if you were to cash them out at that particular point, their value may be up or higher, lower or higher at that particular time, but you're required to say what is those, they call them financial derivatives, what are their value, fair value at that particular point in time. So if you cash them out beforehand, and we're not likely to do that, if you recorded that time, it says actually their value is maybe the interest rates are lower than what we have paid for them or whatever, then it records a loss. So every month we have to have that fair value, and it's recognised in the balance sheet, and any of that difference, so at the end of, and it was in the previous paper, at the end of the 30th of June, those derivatives were worth of a liability of 800k. Now they're saying that's a liability of 2.1. That difference is recognised as a loss here. It's just an accounting things. It would only be if we were to cash out some of the things is we've got too much swaps for the amount of debt, it's transferred over to a new entity or someone completely paid, we realise them, that would be the loss that we would be realising.
But you can roll them over, right?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Good.
Councillor Muir, thank you.
Could you just explain the 68.7 million gain on property revaluation?
What page? Page?
It's on the table on page 45.
45.
So on page 45, on the full year budget, they've got the gains and losses on property revaluation. Each year we're required to, some of them have revaluation gains, but in any year we're required to say what are the movements of those assets. And the majority, we revalue roading each year, and most of that on average, this is the increase that comes from either the roading network, or we say what are the unit rates have gone on for their asset values for the infrastructure assets, which is mostly the four waters, mostly within those. And that increase in value says, okay, they've increased for what it was before, and so that's the increase that we expect to have for those assets. Pretty much paper figure. It goes to revaluation reserve, and so that's why we don't refer to that line as the total comprehensive revenue and expenses. We do it at year end. We refer to what is the cash impact, what is the rates impact, the line before it, because it's just revaluation reserves, which can go up. Mostly go up, doesn't really go down, but yeah.
Councillor Foster and then Councillor Alder.
Thank you. I'm saying page 45. Development and financial contributions are quite a lot under the budget. Does that have any indication of the level of building activity that's happening around the place?
So in terms of that, as the note 4 on that, say page 46, what we do, we have to set a 3-year plan, and at that 3-year plan, we estimate what's the number of development contributions out there, what is the kind of the movements, what we call infill, what is the normal BAU that we would expect to have, and we kind of map it out based on that information and the kind of the growth, what is known, and then what do you see as movements. So some of that may be timing or whatever that it is, but it is based on some parameters that we can sort of extrapolate with over that 3-year period.
So if we were consistently seeing that as being under budget, that would be an indicator of less growth, less building activity.
Potentially what we thought, yes.
We've set it at a rate that was normal back a couple of years ago, or a year or so ago, and now it's not the same. So
It could be. It also, in this early stages here, it could be a timing. I mean, last year, I think we were seeing some of those development contributions were well under this here, and this is kind of 1/12 of the budget, if you like. But towards year end, I think we got about 1.6 million, still about 1.6, 1.7 million. So some of that can be timing, just when we're receiving it. And it's, yeah. But it also could be an indication that those estimates that we actually had or known from those subdivisions is taking a little bit longer than what was originally thought.
Thank you, Your Worship. So page 47, and really just trying to make a little bit of sense of the non-current assets, liabilities and accumulated surpluses. So just as mentioned before, 68 million is the increase in property, expected increase in property revaluation, which I'm sort of thinking is a bit like capital gains. Is that a little bit
Potentially.
potentially? Okay, going to line point 12, where property, plant and equipment has gone up 300, or predicted to go up 300 million through this current coming up year. And then debt is increasing by 40 million, that is point number 9. And then point number, it hasn't got one, but it's accumulated surplus goes up 170, and then revaluation reserve goes up 120. So all those figures work in together to give us the 300 mil increase, or?
Not all, they're not all, some of them are mutually exclusive. So for argument's sake, your first one, property, plant and equipment, this is saying, this is year to date, this is, so bear in mind, this is where we are to date, and the 4-year budget is 3.2 million. So at the moment it says property, plant and equipment, and sometimes there's a little bit of a timing issue with the, because we set the annual plans a year and a half before we've got the results from the previous year, so sometimes there's a little bit of a lag with it, but essentially what that's saying, to make the property and plant and equipment, yes, if there's revaluation reserves, the assets are going to go up, they're going to be worth more, but we also have got about 170 million that we're doing on our CapEx, our capital program. So those two things go hand in hand. Sorry, I didn't get all the other parts of the things where you mentioned. The revaluations is, it's just what we've got for the revaluation. Probably 19 of the revaluation reserves is probably more likely to be the 30th of June the annual reports period, and we're not going to do anything to the revaluation until we do at the end of the year. That won't change. So this is just actuals now compared to, adding on to the revaluations at the end.
So, yeah, our total assets are predicted to go to 3.2.
Around that, yes. But yeah, bear in mind there are a little bit of a timing issues from the annual plan to the other things, but essentially that's what that's telling you, yes.
Any more questions or queries, someone that haven't spoken yet? If not, wrap it up, Councillor Foster.
Page 50, the Fataupako project had an unsuccessful tender and alternative options for delivering these works are now being explored. Could you just explain that a little bit, please?
So just remind me, are we talking wastewater, stormwater?
Well, that's what I guess it's stormwater, because it's Graham Road, Delator Road upgrade contract, which is stormwater and that's above it. So I guess it's along the similar lines.
Stormwater, yeah, there's stormwater. So I'm going to have to defer to Mr. Barry in terms of that particular project. With it in it, yeah.
Graham Road, sorry.
The Fataupako project had another unsuccessful tender, and alternative options for delivering these works are now being explored. When you go out to tender, I would imagine there's quite a lot of people tendering, so to have an unsuccessful tender is quite an unusual situation, isn't it?
In specialist works around certain times, so I believe this might have wanted to utilise a holiday period, and I'll need some clarification of that. I believe it was a holiday period. No one could provide the services at that time because we wanted to cross some critical driveways that impacted schools.
Yeah.
And everyone dropped out, and then you don't have a competitive tender.
Right. Okay.
So then our budget can't be met. So I believe that was the case. But in normal circumstances, you're correct. We have adequate tenderers. I believe it was related to that, but I can double check that for you.
I was just looking for all this, but I knew.
Okay, thank you everyone. Any more questions or queries? Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Telfer. Seconded, Councillor Ria. If there are no more questions or queries, all in favour? Aye. Contrary, carried. That brings us to the end of our public paper. Thank you to everyone watching online. I now formally close this meeting.